Hello everyone, this is the pilot of me driving home on a Serie A Sunday night, having just commentated on Juventus against Parma. Juventus 2, Parma 0. Goals from new signing Jonathan David on his Bianconeri bow and Dusan Vlahovic. Yes, him, still at the club and still apparently able to pitch in with goals whilst he's there and earning €1 million a month, 12 million net a season. They may as well make the most of him. I apologise for any sound effects you might be getting from my indicating in the car. Anyway, we've just watched Juventus beat Parma, not without a scare, especially when Andrea Cambiaso was sent off 10 minutes from time. But in the end, Juventus dominant in terms of chances created, possession. Kenan Yildiz with both assists, he got player of the match. Just the start they would have wanted, really. A clean sheet to begin with, maximum points, responding to Napoli with the exact same scoreline. Napoli having won 2-0 just over 24 hours earlier by winning in Reggio Emilia against Sassuolo. There was a debut goal there as well for Kevin De Bruyne, as we must now call him, and also the opening goal from last season's MVP, Scott McTominay. We're going to wait to see what Inter do tomorrow night against Torino. But so far we do have a few initial stories and partial verdicts on what the 2025 Serie A, 2025-26 Serie A campaign is going to look like. We shouldn't gloss over Milan, who many were tipping and may still tip to win the Scudetto, making the most of a lightened schedule, playing one game a week with no European football, beaten at home by returning Cremonese, the team that came up via the playoffs. And it's very hard to argue with that scoreline. I only saw the highlights, having done the Sassuolo-Napoli game. But what I can say is, terrific goal from Baschirotto. Great to see him enjoying that move to Cremonese, a trademark header from him. And then what a goal from Federico Bonazzoli. Let's see. Lightning occasionally strikes twice. Let's get the cliches out of there. Certainly did. I remember Bonazzoli scoring a scissor kick for Salernitana against Milan, albeit that was at the Arechi. This one was at San Siro, and an even better goal from that cross coming in from the left-hand side. So, disappointing for Milan. Allegri Mark II, not off to the start that they would have wished for. And next up, they're away at Lecce on the Friday night, which is far from easy. And the problem is, this season, we have just 2 rounds of Italian top-flight fixtures before we go into the September international break. So there's a real possible psychological blow if Milan were to fail to win at the Via del Mare, which is no guarantee, by the way. Then they might find themselves having to wait until the middle of September, the other side of the international break, to actually get their first maximum points on the board. Doesn't really bear thinking about. Then again, we shouldn't jump the gun. We all got ahead of ourselves this time last year when Napoli lost 3-0 at the Bentegodi to Verona on the opening weekend of the season, and Conte still guided them to the Scudetto. Then again, many of you will say, that's Conte, this is Allegri. Then again, Conte 5 Scudetti across 3 different clubs, Allegri 6 with 2 different clubs, including that one with Milan. But he has plenty to prove after a year out of the game. Anyway, this is going to be a format that I might dabble with on a weekly basis on a Sunday night drive home to my Milanese abode. But what I can say is I was impressed with Juventus. They look solid with the returning Bremer, who made a really crucial block to deny Pellegrino early on in the second half. And Bremer also ended up with a big gash on his forehead, so much so that he had strapping round it. But Juventus didn't give much away at all. I don't recall Di Gregorio making many saves. He looked good coming off this line, claiming crosses. And Yildiz is going to be the real difference maker. We saw it in the latter stage of last season. We saw it at the Club World Cup. Both assists for him tonight, squaring it for Vlahovic to tuck home that second after Cambiaso got himself sent off. We need to talk about this. It's becoming an epidemic for Juventus. I mentioned it briefly on commentary. Late last season, Yildiz sent off against Monza for lashing out, straight red card. Got a multiple game ban for violent conduct. Pierre Kalulu did likewise at Lazio, in that game when Lazio equalised late on, and They end up being costly suspensions. The problem for Cambiaso is it's Juventus-Inter in match day 3. The Derby d'Italia is coming the other side of the international break. And what that means is Juventus might find themselves without one of their crucial players who can play on the left, as he did tonight, can play on the right, if need be. It's an Italy international. As a player that Manchester City were willing to spend nearly 60 million euros for as recently as January. Might have faded in the latter stage of last season, but he's still a very accomplished player, Cambiaso. And it was bizarre, really. He almost had 2 attempts to lash out at Matthias Lervik, who was clever, and of course he went down and made a meal of it, but that is the way of things these days. That is the way of the modern game. If you're going to provoke someone and then you get a reaction from them, you are going to try and get them sent off. And that was Parma's final roll of the dice. They were training by a goal to nil. There was 10 minutes remaining, and you thought that might be a game changer. In the end, Vlahovic scores from the very next passage of play. But Cambiaso seemed to just move his forearm towards Lervik, and then when he didn't make proper contact, had another swipe at him with the elbow. And if the referee hadn't seen it, which he did, thought he officiated well, Matteo Marcenaro, then the fourth official, Juan Lukasaki, certainly saw it and got that from another angle. So it's just foolish, it's needless, it's gratuitous, and it's a suspension that Juventus can't really afford at this stage of the season. We'll see what pans out with the remainder of their transfer dealings. The market is open till the 1st of September, lest we forget. Everyone thinks that they're going to try and find a solution for Vlahovic, because he has a year left on his contract. Doesn't look like he's going to extend, certainly not at the same terms that he agreed that lucrative deal. Whether he ends up signing for Milan, we don't know. This could be a final farewell on his 200th Serie A appearances. 87th goal, I believe. Terrific record. Nearly a goal every other game. Or whether it'll be the start of 2 patching things up, we'll see. But there's competition for places. David didn't look that good, I have to say. Some scruffy touches, didn't necessarily hold the ball up well, but he's been recruited to score goals and was a poacher's finish. So on that basis, I think we'd have to say it's a successful debut for the Canada international. So where are we now? Well, we're left with Inter Torino, which is tomorrow night, the Monday night game, the 10th and final game of matchday 1 of the 2025-26 Serie A campaign. Comes the other side of Udinese Verona, about whom there's a bit of doom and gloom, some question marks. And we'll see what Inter do. Their first league game under Christian Kivu. He did have that bedding in period at the Club World Cup with the Everton. So it remains to be seen. Kivu's left Parma. Look like they have some work to do to really get to grips with what's expected of them from their ridiculously young coach, Carlos Cuesta. Only turned 30 recently. The second youngest coach in Serie A history. Answers on a postcard, you can get the youngest. Anyway, this is me wittering on and rambling on. Hopefully I'll be able to publish this audio somewhere and it will be consumable and people will find some sort of value in it. But there's not too much more to say beyond a quick word on Ivan Juric's debut at the Atalanta helm. Could have gone a lot worse, could have gone a lot better. Trailed by a goal to nil at the break after Isakien turned into his own net. And Gianluca Scamacca, though, immediately back with a goal. And I suppose that will be of some comfort to fans of La Dea, whether they hail from Bergamo or elsewhere. Yes, they sold Retegui. Yes, Lookman is basically being punished and he's fuori rosa for the time being, not part of their plans. But in Scamacca, in theory, they have a ready-made replacement for Retegui, and plus all the money they made on the Italy international. We'll see whether Scamacca can stay fit and keep scoring goals. Because if he can, Atalanta should still be a force to be reckoned with. The problem for them is home to Pisa, matchday 1. Anything less than a victory, especially for a new coach, Ivan Juric. Plenty to prove after those underwhelming spells with Roma and Southampton, and following the ultimate hard act, Gianpiero Gasperini, not the start he would have wanted. And next, by the way, they're at the Tardini to take on Parma. So Atalanta, much like Milan, might find themselves without a victory after 2 match days heading into the September international break. But shout out to Davide Nicola and Cremonese. A terrific goal from Bonazzoli, surely going to be strike of the round unless someone from Inter Torino, Udinese or Verona manages to top that tomorrow. Nice to see Vlahovic scoring and having a slightly wry smile on his face. And Jonathan David, much like Kevin De Bruyne, getting a debut goal, which will certainly ease some of the expectation and pressure on those two marquee signings. Pressure will increase on Luka Modric, incidentally, if Milan don't get a result at Lecce on Friday. Anyway, this is me, Patrick Kendrick, signing off on the pilot edition of a as yet unnamed, to be named podcast or piece of content. That's all. Bye-bye.